What's up, everybody? Welcome to Untamed and Unhinged Reptile podcast. That was hella weird. I just said it couldn't. What's up, Stan? What's up, Sam? That it couldn't. We couldn't go live for some reason. It was weird. But on that note, I'm gonna shout out some sponsors. We're gonna do the sponsor shout out real quick. Let me get that up here. Boom. And the banner.
Oh, I got you.
Still waiting for a phone call if I can jump on your show. Oh yeah, you can jump on my show, Sammy, whenever you want. But yeah, I'll call you after this for sure because I didn't know you were asking me to call you. I thought you were talking to the other guy we had on, Jared. But our guest today is gonna be Revision Reptiles, Tony. I'm gonna go ahead and bring him on out. What's up,
How's it
Tony?
going, guys?
What up, Tony?
How's it going, everybody?
It's going good. Go ahead and tell us about yourself. You know what you're working with, species, all species you work with.
Background on what I work with. I'm working with yellow anacondas. Have been probably long. That and Morelia have been the longest. Along with those, I've got a little bit of a Liasis maclots project or pair that I'm working with. I've got elephant trunk snakes, and that's kind of the array that I work with currently. I do have background on green trees. Really the majority of the Morelia complex, also tegus, black and white, blues. Enjoyed those, but mainly working with those first four species.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. And how hard is it to work with anacondas?
Anacondas are actually very easy. Simple snakes to work with, and overall the biggest thing, I mean, anybody that's worked with boas and even had adult boas, you can work with anacondas. Anybody that works with retics, you definitely can work with anacondas. Burmese pythons, same thing. Yellow anacondas, at least. Green anacondas, obviously you need a little bit more experience for the size ratio and what they need for that end, but the biggest thing with the yellow anacondas and where they have the reputation is they have an attitude, and it's more of a respect kind of thing of you need to respect me and understand that I'm a snake that just deserves respect. You can easily, when you handle and work with them, you learn to read them very quickly. Or if you've handled and worked with really most snakes, you can kind of read the snake. It tenses up, its body tenses up, and you know to, hey, kind of slow down. So they're really easy to read. The biggest problem is they have a 90-degree strike. So they'll be climbing right along you, and then if they don't feel comfortable, they hit you at 90 degrees. And that's more of the surprising part that a lot of people can't get past is they'll hit you right there, whereas most snakes, they'll kind of give you that warning of they'll kind of S up or look at you or target towards you, whereas the yellow anacondas specifically, or the green anacondas also, they'll be more kind of cruising along, and then they'll just tag you real quick and continue on their way.
That's crazy.
They do still do the defensive, hey, I'm going to defend myself when you if you've got them in tubs mainly, they'll do that. Understandably, you're taking them out from a dark environment, and then they're getting this flash of light, and this big monkey that often drops food or something in there. So understandably, they have that. But in my experience with the yellow anacondas, really, it comes down to how much work you put into them and respect you have. Because the first one I ever got, I mean, I'd never had boas, Burmese pythons, reticulated pythons. I went straight into yellow anacondas after Morelia. And I just really wanted it that bad. So I researched it for a good 6 to 8 months and couldn't find them. So that kind of helped with me forced to be researching. And finally, by the time I found one, I got a baby. Really had done 6 to 8 months of research. And by that time, I was really committed to wanting this thing, and I got it, and I was fascinated with it. So quickly just got it handling. So that one became basically an ambassador. Still have it to this day. That was in 2006. That one I used with my local vet in educational shows when they would do things to kind of educational things with the local schools to have future vets, people that wanted kids that wanted to be future vets. They would do little classes. They'd reach out and kind of, hey, we need some unique snakes. You have an anaconda, you have some carpet pythons. They're all really well to handle. They handle pretty well. Can we work with you for a weekend? So he's been used in educational shows and a number of them with the vets. So as that was the first real experience with yellow anacondas, the whole persona and background of they're terrible, this and that was instantly kind of dismissed on my end. Now they do have a reputation for a reason. As I said, you really, they're like similar to a dog. If you get a dog and pin it up in the backyard and just give it food and the minimal care, it's not going to be the most friendly. Same thing with anaconda. You give it the attention and regular handling and frequent handling or working with on occasion. It's going to be an animal that you can interact with. If you just throw food in there, it's going to be your typical animal or snake that you just threw food in there. Realistically, a lot of species have that same exact example. Working with carpet pythons, I've had carpet pythons that to this day are worse than yellow anacondas that I've worked with. And then I've got yellow anacondas that obviously could take out the reputation of python with ease. So the biggest thing with them, really, they're easy overall, care-wise, maintenance-wise. They do have the stigma. They have that for a reason, in my opinion and my experience. It really just, to me, it's kind of surprising that stigma is so much of a deterrent for this species, to be honest. I don't know if it's just because of the stigma, or maybe there's not so much genetically advanced in it, and maybe that's kind of taken with the attention. Obviously, the Lacey Act impacts on it, that it's kind of been in and out of the Lacey Act over the years, especially the recent years. That has potentially or has significantly played an impact on them. But even before that, they were really never a huge species, and I have to believe that's probably to that reputation. But again, like your boas, I've interacted with boas, and I've gotten them in on trades when I was younger or when I was starting out with different things and kind of figuring out what I wanted to work with. And I've had boas and Burmese pythons that were way, way worse than these things. Any anacondas I've ever owned. I've had a couple. I got a pair of albino Burmese pythons that I'll take any new anaconda, yellow anaconda, over that pair of Burmese pythons. And they were babies. It was just, they were a nightmare to handle. And I'm okay with taking that within reason. That's kind of my thing, is I'm okay with it. I don't like to be bit. I don't care to be bit. I'll use gloves if there's something that's too snappy, because I don't want to mess my hands up. Not that it's a problem. I'll take the bite. I can't get past the flinch. So I hate seeing animals fly when you have that flinch. So just out of the safety of them and habit of me, I haven't played the Russian roulette with a bucket of snakes yet and gotten past that fear. So occasionally, if I know the animal's that bad, I will grab the gloves. Most times I'll use hooks and things if necessary, still handle a lot of things. But nothing really is that bad. Care-wise, maintenance-wise, that caution said, I'm in Southern California. So similar to, I believe, Eric, your conditions, we're pretty good on temperatures and overall conditions in Southern California for a lot of species.
Yeah. So do you keep them outside?
I don't have anything outside. I've always wanted to. I built enclosures. I temporarily kept them outside. When I had tegus, I had a big, basically bench style 12-foot by 4-foot enclosure that I built outside. And I would put them out there occasionally, but currently nothing's outside in the environments, just because potentials of everything getting out where I live. I don't really want to advertise that I have necessarily large snakes or yellow anacondas specifically. When we get another house, that is hopefully the plan, is to be able to do some outdoor enclosures, because I do believe they'd be fine outside. They do need the supplemental heat kind of, but they would be pretty well outside.
How many adults do you currently have of the yellow anacondas?
Currently for the adults, I've got a total of, I want to say one female is actually coming to the breeding this year because I just split her off. I've got a total of 2.4 adults right now.
Nice.
That's a mix of the original male that I got in 2006. I have a pair, or a trio that I purchased from Dan, and then I have one female that just came in, and another young male. The male is young, so he's really a young adult, but he's a male, so he's coming to maturity already. The last two I produced through a few generations of litters. The first litter I produced was in 2011. Held back a baby from that. A couple of years later, well, actually 3 years later, that holdback ended up breeding back to mom. We held back another from that litter. So each generation that we've produced, we've held something back, and now it's kind of coming into those offspring are finally reaching age. When we bought our house here, we kind of cut back the collection of adult yellow anacondas. So the original mom and dad, we let go and sold off to I want to say the owners were zoo in Mexico. Because we're right here, so they ended up getting them. I don't know if it was actually in Mexico or where it was specifically, but they owned places in Mexico, and they'd had places in California. But we sold those young adults off when we bought the house, just because we knew we realistically didn't need that many adults. At that time, we would have had three adult females and one adult male that all wanted to breed. We didn't have the cage space and enclosure space, so we knew we wanted to keep our holdbacks and breed our future offspring. So we figured we'd just cut back. At that time was around the Lacey-Ax impact in California and throughout the U.S. So it was one of those where we'll invest in the long term on it and let the short term turnover. Nobody needs to really be producing them that significantly, so we'll kind of do that cutback at that time. Now in total, we've got 12 currently with the holdbacks that we've got over the last couple generations also. So from
Nice.
2023 offspring babies all the way up to our 2006 male.
Question. So I have two questions and one question actually. So are they hard to breed? And when they're hatched, are they already like a certain size that, like, what is the proper, I guess what I'm trying to say is what is a proper tank for them, or an enclosure?
At fresh birth, they're, I want to say, equivalent to a boa. Now I caution that, like a baby boa. I caution that just because I haven't seen too many freshly born baby boas, but I would say it's roughly around the same similarity in size. Enclosure wise, I start our babies out actually in a hatchling rack initially, and then just to get them comfortable and going. And with yellow anacondas specifically, I don't know if this is true for green anacondas, because I have very little experience with them. But with yellow anacondas, with my babies, the moment they're born, they get basically a hatchling tub with wet paper towel, a saturated wet paper towel, and then they'll get a fresh thawed rodent that night. And 90% of them, if not more, will eat that rodent within the first 12 hours. So they'll start out in a hatchling tub and then elevate them up through there. I'm now, in the last couple of years of producing litters, I've been more experimenting with my own holdbacks, the offspring babies. And I'm starting to find personally that if I cohabitate babies, I do it with adults, caution that, do it within reason. And again, I caution that for the known reasons and obvious reasons. But with babies, if I cohabitate them and start them off in a larger tub or an enclosure and cohabitate a pair or a couple in there, the interactions they have between each other on the frequency, they start to understand and kind of help cut that that natural defense down. Now, again, that's my personal experience with the stuff I'm working with lately. Some people could say it's potentially because captive bred, generations, blah, blah, blah. I think it's because just natural interaction. If you think about the logic, you're in an environment and something's biting you because it got upset that you touched it and you walked away, and then an hour and a half you came back and did the same thing, you're going to learn your lesson. Don't touch. Or when you bite something and it bites you back, you're going to think twice about doing that. Then I very, very, very rarely, and since 2006, starting with yellow anacondas and all the times I've been working with them up till now, I've very rarely ever had to pull anything out and actually physically separate it because I was concerned of any kind of issue. If I've ever seen a strike, or majority of strikes in all the years, it's a defensive strike that's just get the hell away from me, don't touch me, leave me alone. So they're not naturally, obviously, I'm not soaking my hands in rodents. So for those online social people that are, hey, they do it because this, that, and another thing, it'll happen if you have your hands saturated with the rodent, things like that. But in general, proper handling and kind of just understanding and knowledge of how to handle snakes overall, I haven't ever really had personally a feeding bite from a yellow anaconda. It's always been a defensive get away and never just an instant let go. I've never in anything that I've got, never seen anything that's that way. And that's been anything in my collection that's been I'm going to bite you and hold on kind of bite, anything like that. But again, I guarantee that happens. I understand it happens. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying with they're not one that the stigma says one thing, but I caution a lot of people to kind of look past a lot of online stigmas. They're pretty easy to handle. They're very easy to work with, and with respect and understanding of how to handle them, they actually are very simple snake to kind of work with.
How big are your females of the yellows?
My biggest female right now is probably pushing, and I apologize because I may get slaughtered in this from my buddy Brandon, because he tends to say that I underestimate the size, but I personally believe she's about 9.5 foot max.
It's not as big as I thought they would get.
Thickness around, you're talking maybe a softball when she's not fed. So I don't feed heavy. They go off feeding for an extended period of time and a reasonable period of time during breeding season. I don't worry about it. They're great eaters. The one thing I do caution anybody trying to get into them and work with them, stay away from guinea pigs. I've made that mistake. They love them. Most species do. It's not a good one. Health-wise, I don't think they're great for them. The stool is very waxy, very waxy. Obviously, guinea pigs are high on fat. Anything high on fat, I basically look at it as you're feeding a hamburger versus a steak. So they love them, but we all love to stop at McDonald's on the way home and get a hamburger or get something fast. Occasionally, it's not the right option. They work if you have a stubborn feeder. But the thing is with guinea pigs, they are tough to transition out. I had a stubborn male that would just literally refuse to eat anything but guinea pigs, and I had to basically starve him for a good 6 to 8 months. And he looked fine, so there was no concern on that. But it was literally, I'm not feeding you for this long, because if I try to feed you anything else, you're refusing it. And if I offer this, you're instantly take it.
Take what you can get.
Yeah, they were taking that, and it was kind of just that. Other than that, I've never had a problem transitioning any of them. Because they're naturally a larger species, natural larger snake, they really are not picky feeders most times. As I said, when they're born, they'll take food within the first 12 hours, frozen thawed even. So there's very few that require you have to give it this. They associate that scent. What are the advantages to that if frozen thawed from the beginning? Obviously, as you continue to come over, grab it, walk away, or kind of pull it away and kind of just slowly eat it. rather than striking at it. Overall size, males, I'm looking at, I want to say probably 8 foot for my adult male. And he's maybe baseball thickness and diameter, maybe a little bit thicker.
Here, check this out.
Go ahead.
Guess where Tony gets his feeders from?
Oh, yeah, just did this today. And hey, you guys it came up on a Google search just for a coupon. Been using Cold Blood Cafe. But Untamed, Unchained, you guys came up. So,
Bro, because he told me, he's like, I just did he posted, I saw a story on his story, and it said, I just bought a whole truckload of Cold Blood Cafe, and I messaged like jokingly, I was like, I hope you use the code. And he's like, I actually did, because it came up.
It did. It came up, and I was like, I went through checkout, realized at checkout. I was like, yeah, that's kind of nice. I'm gonna go ahead and let him know tonight. But I've been off and on going with them. I've got a local supplier, a couple locals. Tried to support California local. The problem is with the urea feeders I've got, it's a little bit difficult. One person dropped out here, one person drops out here. They get a little scarce here, they get a little scarce here. So definitely met Des a couple times through her trips through California. Solid people. So definitely support within the industry, and absolutely, especially since they started supplying pigs, and that kind of sold me. Finally transitioned with a local. I got the yellow anacondas over to really small pigs, maybe 1.5 to 2 pound pigs for the adults, and then that it was really steady in the beginning. They kind of fell off, and looked around, and Cold Blood Cafe just happened to be supplying them too. So since then, it's kind of, hey, I'm looking to supply, bite the bullet, get a couple boxes shipped in, stock the freezer, and I'm good.
And they do good. They package it really well.
Yeah. I
like the way they package your stuff.
I mean, we placed the order today. They were a little shy on a few pigs. No big deal to us. We understand we were ordering low supplies. You get that warning on their website anyway, which is solid. So we just maxed that out. Chris reached out, I think, within an hour and a half of us placing that order, say, hey, we're a little shy on this. No problem. No rush, send it out. But that's kind of nice that they were even right away. Again, they have that warning on the website. Hey, we're running low on this. This is all we got. And then to go through at the end of it and go through the order, hey, reach out. Hey, we'll get that into the next order. We'll restock, or how do we go about getting this fixed out? So we're not in any rush. Freezer's still there. We're just stocking up.
See, but that's awesome though. They're like really good too. They get back to you quickly, very responsive. Desiree even mentioned that our code has been used quite frequently, bro.
Oh,
just
yeah.
So you know.
As I said, one of the advantages probably is because just in general, and I never really do this for any of their stuff because typically I'm pretty on top of who's got the codes or where they are with them, because I go through them already. But hanging out with Brandon this last weekend with Morelia House, he mentioned, we were talking about, hey, always when you meet your buddies, especially the reptile buddies, hey, who do you go through? Where are you getting this? Da, da, da. He was mentioning, he's like, yeah, whoever's got it, I'll Google search. Da, da. So I did that. And again, that came up. That was the first code that came up. So the fact that it's the first code coming up, that's probably a huge advantage to that, and huge reasoning as to why. So that's solid. I appreciate it. I can say that.
Well, thank you for using the codes, because when I make a reel, I legit like make it to where it's all Cold Blood Cafe. As Eric, you seen the reel? It's just like the slides of the feeders. Like if you go look on the page, the feeders are there, pigs, quails, chicks, or whatever it may be.
Advertised for, just because the way it comes across so many. So it's a rough one. It's a rough one to, hey.
Yeah.
Just because the visual appearance of it doesn't appeal to the majority of the crowds. Obviously, the reptile crowd, we're like, yeah. But the standard appeal that's just going through, especially online, looking through stuff, come across something like that, that's not the biggest appeal. So I can imagine that one's a tough one to run through sometimes. They're advertised for.
Well, what's his name? Last week, yeah, right? From Hayes Serpent.
Mm-hmm.
Zach. There you go, Zach.
Yeah.
He was like, man, all they need are big chickens, frozen chickens. Because he's like, my
The whole
ivory,
chicken.
yeah, he was like, my ivory python is downing chickens and he can't get off of them. He's being stingy. So he's like, I'm gonna use this platform to complain and be like, if Cold Blooded Cafe could make me whole chickens or freeze whole chickens, he's like, they'll have my whole business. So I was like,
Hey,
dude, that'd be awesome.
I'm sure that's on the table soon enough. I imagine it has to be.
I hope so, because I mean, if they can get them whole chickens and get them all that business, hell yeah, the more the merrier. You know what I'm
I
saying?
mean, you can connect with your local Albertsons or Stater Brothers also. Grocery store.
Yeah, everywhere. Grocery store, kind of like PetSmart, Petco, where they have like a whole frozen thaw check section.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that'd be cool though if they had Cold Blooded Cafe there, because I mean, their animals are way better anyway. They're selling out at retail stores.
I'm sure that's an interesting market to get into business wise.
Yeah, I feel it'd be like a lot of work to do too, though. I mean,
Yeah.
half of the stuff I do, like for marketing and then trying to get all this stuff together, like the stickers for the packages, for the packets and the hats, everything is just that's a lot. It's tiring. It's exhausting.
Yeah. Well, it's a business. Every business is a labor of love, so it's a lot of work.
What's up, Leland? Leland's here, guys. Rika. I like Leland. He's awesome. So my next question is, your elephant snakes. How do you get the water that color? Because I know you have to do something to make it that way. There's like certain chemicals or something you use to make it that way. From what they were trying to explain to me. Well, somebody else was trying to explain to me.
Mm-hmm. So most enclosures and most setups, they use heavy tannins, which are basically the breakdowns of the material. So like you can get tannins from logs, you can get tannins from leaves, you can get tannins from a few areas. It's really just when you see a stream that's saturated with dark mud water, basically tea water is what you're making. That's really what it is. So the people that have the extreme, when you have the black water environment is what it's typically referred to as. And it's really just a heavy saturated, in layman's terms, it's a saturated tea of water. You can use, again, manzanita, ghost wood, various woods and aquatic woods or logs, leaves, a lot of different leaves. I use almond leaves personally if I want to get a certain appearance and visualization. What you're doing is really just making an acidic environment, so to say, a dark acidic environment with that. I don't necessarily do it to strive for health and care with my elephant trunk snakes. A lot of care sheets emphasize that specifically tannins and your pH or your acidic level of your aquatic tank or environment is highly important. I did focus on that very early on when I got started and got introed and introduced to all of this. I've since, in the years of working with them, gotten away from even caring about the tannin levels, the appearance. To me, that's a visual appearance. Do you like the way it looks with the brownish water and the way that the environment is? I don't know. And again, I'm not an expert on this matter. This is all personal experience for my experience with elephant trunk snakes. I got introduced to them by a friend that had gotten one, done all the research and done all the care every the way that's supposed to, didn't have any success, had months of it and just didn't have success, handed it over and said, hey, I'm not having any success. I've done everything in the book. You've kind of been side by side helping me research doing this. If you want to take a stab at it, I mean, unfortunately, he chalked it up. It's on its way out. It's been 6 months of just no success. It's not showing any responses. Try it out. And obviously in that situation, took it on, I had failure with it, but being introduced to kind of that failure just drove me to, okay, I need to now understand what's going on and kind of look at it. It's a blessing in disguise.
So
But
Jordan,
going through that, as I said, the fact that him and I went through the 6 months basically side by side, he got it and instantly contacted me. And for the 6 months, we were side by side just doing all online research for this thing, trying to get it going. Following the rules, everything that said, do this, you need this, you need to stay on top of this, and just no success at either location, holding the same stuff, trying the same things, same parameters, same everything, different types of setups, but what needed to be done based on everything that was available care wise. And then eventually we just started with that failure, kind of acquired our own or another pair from DM Exotics at a local. I want to say it was a Pomona show, but ended up coming across DM Exotics. I want to say it was a couple months later. They had a pair and ended up picking them up and talking with Dan, going over it. Yeah, I've gotten stuff from Dan in the past over the years. Thankfully, with being where I'm at and the local shows being the Southern California ones, he's basically my main source of if I want something unique and oddity wise, that was the source to go to at a show. So saw those, got those through him, knowing he's the importer and they came straight from him, getting him comfortable talking with him, picked his brain of how he had them set up. And it was one of those, here's how they're set up basically before they transport them. And here's how they're saying set up when they get here. Here's how I set them up. Here's what I recommend temporarily. And just the ideas of it was kind of, well, that's interesting. And just kind of got me thinking. So it took really the parameters out of that and then had me thinking more into the purpose of the medical environment for the tannins and the coloration in there and the pH levels that everything says. Overall, you're creating an acidic environment, and one of the problems for elephant trunk snakes is white spot. And with an acidic environment, white spot is basically not able to survive because it is it's acknowledged as a fungal infection or a fungal problem. So the idea of the tannins in the acidic environment is really just a medical environment. So we started there, but I think long term, the problem that we ran into, or that a lot of people ran into with the care sheets and stuff, is that's like living in a hospital. You can do it. It's not ideal. You don't want to do that. You don't live in the hospital. You don't survive in the hospital long term. It's an environment to get you back on your feet, back to health, and back out. So I think that's where a lot of things stunted. A lot of your care sheets and things like that say, do this for your pH, do this for your tannins, do this for the requirement. Their average expectation of life in captivity is about 4 years max. And we know imports are coming in older than that, and there's no way in hell that a snake is average to live 4 years and reproduce when we're seeing extreme size differences. So just seeing that, the care sheet information, getting into a new pair, looking at it from directly with importers and different importers, and just, hey, what do you guys do temporarily? Care sheets say to do this. There's no way every importer is doing this and having this set up on a temporary basis for transit. You've got something like this that's unique, has pretty high care. Most of these importers do not plan to have them for an extended period of time. Thinking of the fact that it's a transitional period, what they've got, what the care sheets say, and what their transitional period is. Where do those coincide? Looking into that, and then just starting to watch a setup and leave it alone. Really is what has been the most successful for us with them. If you can just, with us finding out and finally deciding we're not going to check our parameters, we're not going to check the water, we just want to focus on holding and maintaining temperature, a steady temperature, and going with the temperature, and that's it. That was the best thing for watching them and kind of getting them going. They kind of just sitting back and watching the temperature stabilize, the environment be alone. We do still see, and I caught like a lot of people say, well, the white spot's a problem. We do still see it. I still see it. Oftentimes, the biggest note that I've noticed over the years is they go through cycles of it. They go into a shed cycle or a deep blue cycle, and all of a sudden it pops up all over. They shed, it sheds off, and it's gone. They come as they enter back into a shed cycle. It seems to reappear in a fragmented state, or minimally, if at all. So this seems to be it more populates itself or kind of pops up with the shed cycles. And as you're going through we're coming into a shed, we're exiting a shed. Then they shed, you see it all throughout the shed, but the snake may not have any, if little, remnants of it. I'm not saying at all that it's not something to caution or be concerned about. It absolutely is. But I think personally, it's come to be, from my perspective, it's more of a stress induced problem. It's a reaction to the environment. And it's more when the snakes are highly stressed, it's highly populated and it's very highly agitated, which causes more problems. If your snake if it's not a stressful environment and they're comfortable, you're not going to run into those environments. You're not going to run into you shouldn't run into the white spot. Now, if you're keeping it in that acidic environment, following that higher pH and the heavy tannin treatments with the leaves or the heavy logs, you can do the leaves with boiled water to pull that tannins out, and then just add it in concentration to your tank. Or what we do is if we want to add tannins, we'll just throw whole leaves in there outside of the logs we've got in there. So let those naturally break down. It's a visual appeal. I like to see just the natural environment breaking it down. The leaves look down or through the tank and see the leaves in there. But as those break down, they'll leach the tannins. You can do that to get that acidic environment. That acidic environment obviously is what is triggering or fighting that white spot. Basically, it's an acid. They're living in an acid water. The snake is in a highly acidic water, and everything on the outside of that body is in constant contact with that acid. Now, to me, the snake doesn't naturally need to be in that, and that's because it survives because it breathes air. So it's coming up out of the water. So to us, we think it's a helpful environment, but that's why we kind of lean at it's more of a hospital than a lifetime. Because just imagining if your entire body is in an acidic environment, it's constantly burning to kill off anything. And the only thing that's not you have to come up to get air. You probably aren't breathing and affected heavily by that acidic environment internally. Over time, long term, that is not the case. Over long term, if you're only experiencing that environment, you are going to have a heavy impact over a period of time if constant exposure is the only acidic environment you have. Whereas if you've got the ability to kind of get a fresher environment and occasionally siphon into, hey, I need a medical state. Now I can escape this medical state. Now you're not just constantly under that stress or that acidic environment. Again, caution that because every care sheet says you need that. We just personally don't follow it, don't check it, and don't watch it. Go right ahead.
That's our sponsor, Michael.
It's very interesting.
Good morning.
He just woke up at work. So, do you have to let the water acclimate? Have you successfully breeded elephant trunk snakes?
I have not successfully bred.
Okay.
I'm going to say yet. I have to say it's a long-term hope, desire, obviously. It's always the goal. I'd like to be there. I think I'm a couple more years out from stable conditions and maybe a few changes based on observation. I just got to watch some things a couple more seasons. And if things don't go, I think I'll know a little bit as to what might be reasoning why. But no, I personally am not aware of anyone within the U.S. and I'm absolutely happy to put my foot in my mouth if somebody comes forward and can prove me wrong with this. Absolutely, please. But I don't know anyone that's been successful that has them. No, unfortunately, no greens.
He has yellow.
Yellow anacondas. Yep.
Hey, so this Michael's the guy that I was telling you about that he works with tigers in Texas. That's him.
Oh, nice. I don't know anybody, and I haven't found anybody that can honestly back that that can provide information on what they did or how they did it and that bred it. But obviously, with online, I've met plenty that have bred them. I don't believe them, but I've met plenty of people who say, "Oh, back in the day, we bred them. They were easy, this and that. We stopped breeding them because they didn't do this, they didn't do that." I would love to. I have personally this past year, I did witness a lock on one of our males and adult females. It's a proven breeder female. She was imported gravid for the previous owner. Dropped. He recovered her. I followed her basically. We talked the whole time since she came in and was imported. Followed all this stuff there. He had kind of tank problems and reached out, and we connected, thankfully. And I was able to get her from him. So this year, I've had her for a while here and kind of moved her into the pond in the garage with the other adults. And she was locked. I caught them locked for 12 hours solid. I don't know if there was breaks, but I mean, I left in the morning and got back 12 hours later, and they were literally in the exact same position, still locked up. Got photos of that. So that's the only lock photos that I've got. But that's the closest I've gotten. It's not my main focus. Obviously, that's high on my list of hopes.
And
my big thing is really just keeping a successful, healthy adult going through that cycles, and just can we get a consistency on adults of a longevity. Thankfully, I'm at that point where a lot of the we've had pretty good success with long-term juveniles for the last couple of years. A couple adults that were imported have transitioned, and we've got them, and they've been doing really well the last couple of years. So they seem to be established well. But before I feel comfortable with saying I'm good with this species, here's how you do it, and here's how it's done, I basically want to continue. I want to spread everything out and go, okay, first I got to produce them. Second, I've got to get some more babies from fresh imports. Prove that the transition through acquisition through health of at least the first couple of years is successful consistently through a couple of those to say, yes, I'm comfortable with this is how you should accurately set up. I'm feeling more comfortable just because of the long-term success I've had or personal experience, giving people the caution of, hey, this is what we do. This is the cautionary tale. We do recommend everybody research and read every bit of what's online. It's published for a reason, whether the person was just fully capable of publishing it and that's about it or not. Doesn't matter. Read it. It's available. And then step back and kind of watch and observe your own animal. Micro tweaking is the biggest stressor.
so I have a question here.
Yeah.
I want to know what the difference between the green anaconda and the yellow anaconda is.
Green anaconda and the yellow
Why is
anaconda?
why is the green anaconda so much better than the yellow?
The yellow anaconda is the smaller species. The green and it's got from the anaconda aspect and from what I've heard over the years, the way to look at them is the green anaconda and the yellow anaconda. The yellow anaconda's got the short man complex. That's why it's got the attitude. It's not as big as the green. The green's got all the attention, so they're pissed off from that. Overall, they're basically half the size. The greens are a little bit more mild, but I think personally we find that with a lot of large species. As they're known to be really large, they tend to be a little bit more placid naturally. Obviously, when you go to Africa, there's a little bit more aggression needed.
Yeah.
Needed, but overall, most of the large species are not intimidated by a lot of stuff. Yellow anacondas tend to believe most of the paperwork says they average 15 to 18 feet, maybe 18 to 12 feet. I personally find the males are 8 to 10 foot. Females are probably, I mean, you can get a 12 foot, maybe push a little bit more. Yellows, as I said, they've got the defensive and they've got the natural stigma that they're not nice. So they're not the one that you're naturally going to be able to just easily grab and kind of, if you can't take one that hasn't been handled and start showing it off to kids. But if you've got one that's been handled, like your pet snake, or one that you really, really like and you handle on a frequency basis and you handle and you can do that. As I said, I have a yellow that to this day I use with my children. I have used with educational shows since buying the house. He's kind of gone into retirement. Now he's just helping my kids learn how to handle, approach, respect larger species before letting them kind of tolerate or attempt with the larger ones. Hey, this one I'm comfortable with. You're not going to have a problem. The other ones, when you get there, you can get there and you'll learn the respect side. But these ones, as little 3 or 6-year-olds, you're going to be a little bit more comfortable. The size is off-putting, but the attitude, you've seen plenty that they're great. Yellow anaconda ball. It'd be cool.
I don't know. I want a yellow anaconda. I love yellow because I've seen them in person.
Would be cool. No, I think it's the other way around, actually. I think the green anacondas, the ball python wanted to be cool, and the yellow anacondas off in the side.
I just like the iridescence on the yellow, and plus the markings on the face of the yellow anaconda. Like, yeah, when they always have one. Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry. I was gonna say they always have one at They always have one when they bring the Reptilian Nation Expo. There's always one there, and it's super huge. It's just so like girthy, thick.
Oh yeah,
and it's just wrapped around him, and he's chill as hell too.
Yeah, you can get them massive. You can power feed them, and they'll get big. You can just steady feed them to keep them standard size. As I said, I've been surprised at more as I go to more and more of the shows that they haven't been more popular. But again, the stigma behind them that they've got an attitude, they have it. They do. You just have to be able to get past that. And when you're looking at something and the vendor opens it up and that one wants to bite you and that one's bigger and it has more color and is a little bit more placid, most people tend to go that route. Because especially at a show, nobody wants to go and be like, oh, I want to handle that. And they're like, oh, flinch or have a problem, or they're just getting tagged left and right. They're like, you know what? No, I don't want to do that. But overall, with regular handling and past that little baby stage, they get there. Greens naturally seem to be a little bit more placid from the start. And that's where, and then obviously the Hollywood and the background, their size, that's naturally why they're always going to be the storefront for that species. The fact that yellows were on the Lacey Act before the greens, that easily shut down a lot of the interest in yellows, but that was because most people don't want yellows because they're a little more cantankerous. So it was easier to go after a species that naturally is a little more defensive, is a little more problematic. But the reality is the green anaconda and the yellow anaconda can survive in the same area. They're just as problematic. The yellow anaconda is less problematic to Florida's actual wildlife because they don't max out at larger sizes as most of the wildlife out there. But they are, again, that natural species that is short man complex of I need to defend myself a little bit more.
I like the yellows a little better just because of the pattern.
They've got
a little bit more going on.
They've got potential. They have a lot of pattern. Typically, it's a range of a yellow shade to an olive almost, an olivish tan. They've got a variation of morphs starting to that have been around for a while. Again, the Lacey Act, I believe, kind of stalled out a lot of those projects because a lot of people kind of, when the Lacey Act came into, it impacted them a couple years ago. I think a lot of people ditched a lot of their yellow anaconda projects and just it was because of the stigma behind them. I think a lot of people weren't really into them as a, hey, I like this species and want to work with them. It was more of the, we're going to go with it for the cost side of the benefit for the company or the business. So a lot of those projects were stalled or ditched. But a lot of those projects are kind of picking back up, which brings in a lot more intense yellows. You're bringing in some of those faded yellow or faded olive colors. Then you're getting just the natural variations of the different patterns through those people that are working with the projects or kind of continued with them and done their selective breeding. Because then you're getting the people that had the heavy blacks and the very thin yellows or small amounts of yellows. Or you're getting the opposite where it was minimal blacks with heavy yellows. So we're starting to see some of those projects or those people that committed to those projects and just took their time with them and didn't just try to produce. Because I don't think really anybody with the yellow anacondas during a period of time was even trying to produce heavy, simply because there was that stigma with the Lacey Act. And most people were just afraid something's going to happen. You're going to get stuck with these. And it's tough. Shops don't want them, or they'll give you wholesale for crap. And most people that stigma, that's the first thing they think.
It's tough.
That is.
Mhm.
But they at that time it was a problem. Most people are starting to kind of get past that. It seems there seem to be. I think people are starting to work with them again this year. I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more litters of them through some of the other breeders, but I think there's some more litters that should be dropping before much longer through a couple of the other breeders that have been at it for a while. Some people have some projects that are much further along than mine and have been around much longer than I have. So I've been waiting to see some of their stuff come up, but it definitely it's a matter of the shades you want. You're not going to get the heavy color variations as you will in like your boas or some of your other species, your ball pythons. They don't have the rainbows. They don't have those. You can get the rainbow, take them out in the sun. The iridescence on a yellow anaconda is amazing. It's similar to some of your liasses have that same iridescence type. But the black and yellow coloration in that with that iridescence is a very intense one and very beautiful.
So you know Megaconda then?
I do.
Yeah.
She was in
The
California.
hypo anaconda. You saw that?
Known her through a couple things. My wife and I actually went to her wedding for her and her husband. Congratulations to them a couple years ago.
That's awesome.
But we've kind of given each other a hard time over the years. I personally have never been one that's heavy on the social media side. It's for sharing my reptiles and kind of that side of it. I have a day job and things to take care of. This is my outside hobby. So this is my escape. I'd love to mingle the two, but to an extent. And that's kind of why, as I said, I volunteer for USARC for the local shows and for things, because that's my way of kind of keeping everything kind of separate. Is I don't go to advertise for me. I don't go to do business. If I'm going to go to the show, I'm going to get to see what I want, and I'm going to go help out USARC because I'm going to be there, and it's for the community. But I'm there for USARC, and it's all for USARC. But Megaconda I've known through the California shows, and then intermittently giving her a hard time and talking over yellow anacondas. Briefly, at one time, she acquired one of our yellow anaconda baby offspring from a couple friends of ours that had problems. Didn't end up going long term with wanting to keep them. Didn't handle them often enough, in my opinion. So was a little cantankerous, and then kind of got them to Megan. And by the time she had it, it continued the I'm defensive and don't want to be your friend. And she didn't want to put the time in my opinion, to it. So at that point, I think she found a new home for it, and that's doing well now. But she's got a stigma against the yellow. She sticks with greens. So we give each other a hard time on that, because she wants me to get one, and I'm like, nah. If I'm going to dedicate the space, it's either going to be for a pond or for more yellow anacondas, because I'd love to get a green, but until I can get a bigger house where I can actually again, Southern California, I'm putting that thing outside. If I can't put it in an outdoor enclosure, I don't want to get a green anaconda. As much as I would love to, Can't do it.
I mean, that would be sick, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, because she hit that hypo anaconda.
She had a hypo. I need to talk to
Yeah,
her. She hit a high. She hit
yeah,
it's the albinos.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
hypo like a pinkish yellow.
Oh, she has a, and I can't. I'm gonna mess it up, so she might give me shit. But she has a
Good.
version of. I want to say it's T positive albino. She has either the T
Yeah, I
positive.
think
or T
I think that is. Yeah, I
She's
think
got
that's what
one
it
of
is.
those albinos. She's basically she's got a lot of that Ben Rennick stock of albinos. Ben Rennick was working with a lot of stuff, not just ball pythons, but he was heavy into a lot of the anaconda stuff. Unfortunately, it was both yellow anacondas and green anacondas before the Lasiacs impacts. When the Lasiac came up, I think a lot of his yellow projects he kind of let go, but he still had the albino projects. And albino, he had anery, I believe, and he had a few of those projects. Is that albino? Yeah, because she
Purple.
had, from that angle, that looked like a ball python. But if she's got hypo, that's awesome. I know. Yeah, Fascination Herps has. Okay, she has the T minus, and Fascination has the T positive. Yep, and Fascination Herps actually, I believe, has released some of their albino stock and has made that available and released them, and they're actually older. So there are some older albinos from the Fascination Herps. I did talk with them, Bruce. Yeah, they were deposits for some people's houses.
Damn.
But
And he said
albino,
fascination hurts.
Albino projects are, and Partho babies, so it kind of makes it a little strange.
20,000. I'm in the wrong hobby, dude. I need to go get these T positive anacondas.
So there are some of those albinos out there. I do believe for the greens there is the anery project. I don't know that it's been proven 100%. I could be, again, wrong on that because I don't follow greens that heavily, but I don't, from the last I saw, I don't think anybody's, and I haven't seen anybody heavily working it enough to say it's a proven project. Yellow anacondas do seem to currently have a bit more. Albino olive python.
Oh, that's the one Zach was talking about, right?
I thought those
Yeah,
were cheap.
I believe so.
I thought they were cheaper too. I thought he said they were a little
That's
cheaper.
what I'm saying. I was like, I thought albino
Olive pythons.
olives have been around for a little while. Albino inland python. If that's right,
Inland.
that's why.
So albino olive inland python. Is that what you're saying? Nick Munn. Check him out real quick.
Yeah. Well, if it's an albino inland from Nick Mutton, then it would be a valid inland. But I don't know that I've seen that. That's worth looking at. If so,
So
means
how long have you been in the hobby, Tony?
I've slowly been in the hobby. I've been working with snakes and reptiles for a long time. Started heavily and kind of working with the collection I've got. Started that in about 2006. And I've slowly built that up. I've gone through, as I said, I've worked with a variety and gone through. I started heavier I've built up slowly the yellow anaconda projects and collection through what I've produced, and then a few pickups here and there. Was a bit heavier with Morelia for a while. Have cut back quite a bit of those projects. Still heavy into still working with Morelia, focusing mainly on the popple and carpet pythons, or IJs for those that are still in the past. And then mainly kind of branched out the latest projects have really branched out into the elephant trunks. I want to say around 2017. And I've been working with them since then. Admittedly, a number of failures from adults to juveniles. And then I've got some the ones that I've got now. I've got ones that I've had for, I want to say going on 4 years ish, 3 to 4 years plus, and or 3 to 4 years down to maybe a year now. So most of the stuff, and then as I said, I don't consider any of that successful until, or keeping any of that stuff very successfully until I can reproduce what I've done with either additional imports or eventually produce my own, have offspring, and then have successfully take those off. And that's really when it'll be a couple rounds of successful, okay, offspring, and they take off. At probably the third round of offspring, I'll say, okay, I'm successful with this. So I know that's horrible for a species that's not worked with very often, and in some eyes I'm already successful, but to me internally I'm not going to say success until I've reproduced and successfully watched that offspring kind of grow up, just so that I feel like I can confidently say to the hobby, this is how you should take care of them. Until then, I'm going to caution everything that I ever say with, this is what I do. If it doesn't work for you, default to the care sheet, because that's what I had to default to. I don't agree with it, but if you're listening to me and you're going to blame me, I blame the care sheet.
Right. I get it, because everything changes constantly. Everything's constantly changing.
Yeah. The
So-
biggest thing for me is with this species specifically, it's become just watch them, set them up, hit your parameters, and sit back and watch. Don't micro tweak. Micro tweaking, especially with this species, I think is the biggest downfall currently, or second biggest downfall. The biggest downfall really for elephant trunk snakes in the hobby to date for me is personally underfeeding. We're not feeding them enough, and the hobby has never fed them enough, in my opinion. It reasonably, I don't think most people understand what they're getting into, especially as a snake keeper. We feed once every couple weeks. These things will take down 30 plus fish a night.
Damn.
You're not and they'll hunt nightly. I mean, they're not
So
taking
that-
30 down every night, but they'll take fish down nightly.
So it's funny you say that, because I got a broadband water snake and he only hunts at night, and I had to put fish in there because he won't. It's supposed to be he eats fish and quail. That's what I read. That's what I researched. Quail and fish, or chicks,
Mhm.
chickens, little chickens. So I put a chicken in there. He won't eat it. He won't touch it. He always just strikes at it and just leaves it alone, right? So I put a bowl of like 5 feeder fish, some large ones. Devoured them, gone.
Are you using?
And I was happy because he hadn't eaten in a long time, like
Mhm.
since I bought him. So
So here's a question, just a curiosity question. No wrong answer. But what were the feeder fish you used? Were they the rosies?
no, like little
rosy minnows?
golden fish feeders, the little
Okay. The little goldfish or
Yeah.
feeder goldfish? Okay.
feeder goldfish kind of.
I would recommend, I mean, those work, they're great. Some of the stigma, at least on the aquatic side, is the thiamine or the I could absolutely be saying that wrong, so I'm horrible, but there's something in them that in high concentrations over time is bad for snakes.
Okay.
So just caution that if that's strictly what they're feeding on.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I haven't seen rosies in years.
Okay. Oh, see, rosies are what we've got at the PetSmart down the street, and that's what most people feed as their feeder fish, is feeders to turtles and stuff. But then they also feed the feeder comets. With the aquatic snakes, what we've done is there's the caution of the thiamine or thiamase. And again, sorry if I'm butchering it for those that actually understand what that is. There's something concentration in them that's not good over a long period of time that causes an issue. At least it's said to be a problem with elephant trunk snakes. So to combat that and get to larger feeder fish, with the elephant trunk snakes, we source tilapia. If you can source tilapia for any, and I recommend this as somebody that works with various snakes. And I've offered doing feeder fish and having to order in large quantities for the snakes. Honestly, I've offered to various snakes, anacondas, carpet pythons, maclots, various species. But tilapia are a good source for any fish feeding species. If you can source tilapia anywhere, that's a great one. Various sizes. So you're not limited to typically your rosies and your feeders at Petco, PetSmart or something. They're going to be a strict size. If you get minnows and you can't get rosies and they just have the minnow feeders, those are really small, and a lot of people feed those to their aquatic snakes, their garter snakes. But there's not much to them in size. So what we found, at least with the elephant trunk snakes, push the size for fish, because although the body of the fish is larger, the makeup of fish is mostly water. So the animals that are feeding on the fish, they can break them down very quickly. And in consumption, if you think of the size and the body, if you take a goldfish out of the water and it dies and decomposes, it very much is nothing body-wise. You get a rosy minnow, it's even less, or a minnow, it's even less. The larger the feeder source, if you can get something that's a stockier fish, for fish feeders, it's more of a solid meal for them. And again, the size, they can actually take down a lot of them can take down a larger size fish than it looks like. Don't go crazy, obviously, but because of the fact that a fish, once you take it out of water and think about it, they're mostly a water-based substance, so they kind of fluctuate a little bit more when consumed. And with snakes, they can kind of stretch already, so that makes that a little bit easier to consume. Tilapia, I recommend for anything that feeds on fish in general. If you can source tilapia, that's great, because you can get every size available, from fresh fry up to a tilapia that you personally can eat yourself. So anything in between, if it feeds on fish, you can source a tilapia at a size for that for them. So if you can get that, and then again, because it overall long-term feeding wise, it's probably the most sustaining financially for any reptile or long-term process, because of the fact that it is already commercially bred for consumption. It's already commercially bred for aquaponic and hydroponic or aquaponic uses. Most states and most places have aquaponic farms. So if you live in a rural area and you can source somebody that has aquaponic farm or any kind of farm where they do any kind of hydroponic, aquaponic farming, chances are they've got tilapia there, and you can reach out to them. Hey, do you have extra stock? Beginning of the season, middle of the season, end of the season. Hey, you're getting ready to take everything down. You got to empty your ponds out. Can I just come down with a bucket and buy out a bunch of these or things like that? But if you can find a fishery, that's best. Otherwise, you're stuck with your local PetSmart, Petco, local aquarium shops. And I don't know where most people are at, but in Southern California, I've found that actually, ironically, when I got into elephant trunk snakes, most of the local aquarium shops were closing. So I don't know if that's the same for most other areas, but a lot of the storefront brick and mortar aquarium shops are no longer really available. So it's tough to go in there and just look through and see what they have overstock supplies of and on sale this week. So you're forced to go to the Petco, PetSmart, the local supply stores, and then you're going to buy fish that are not meant to be feeders when you get to sizes that are more of what you need. The feeder price sizing for those fish, the pricing's right, but the feeders personally for the long-term consumption of those animals is not necessarily right. You really want to look at, in my opinion, you want to look at the mollies, the platies, the life-bearing fish for any of your, and this goes for really personally any of your fish feeding snakes. I would personally, if I had a fish feeding snake and I had to go to a local shop, I'd go straight to the your pet fish. Unfortunately, what's the cheapest pet fish you have that's appropriate in the size that I'm looking for, and I'm buying that 10 count. For the elephant trunk snakes, unfortunately, the worst case that I've done is I've gone in and looked and gone, I want that whole row of African cichlids that you've got. And they're like, well, do you want to know how many are in there? No, unfortunately, I don't. I just want to see that bag. Well, how big is your? Oh, I've got a pond. It's great. It's great. It's a pond. They'll be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. Made the mistake once of saying, oh, I got a tank with a snake and other things. Oh, no, we can't sell you these. So that's the other thing is when you go to your storefronts, they find out you're buying pet fish for a feeder animal They're going to point you down to those little ones that are not the right size and not ideal for your animal, but they're affordable and the right price. So it's tough to do, but I think one of the biggest, as I said before, I think one of the biggest downfalls to most aquatic snake species, at least the larger ones in the hobby so far, can easily be attributed to just feeding. We're not feeding enough. We're not feeding the right quantities, pushing the envelope. I mean, I stock my juvenile tanks with 100 fish. I stock my pond in the garage with 100 to 200 fish, and it varies on sizes. And
Damn.
that sounds like a lot, but they'll plow through that in a steady feeding season. They'll plow through that within 2 weeks clean.
Wow.
Hey, you know
Are your
what? I got a
elephant trunks-
broadband. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Are your elephant trunks only eating live, or can they eat like fillet, like tilapia fillets?
They're all only eating live. I have I have had very minor success. I think twice personally with fresh that arrived. I bought a supply or stocked up tanks, split them out, and then a fish had passed or died in transport or something. And I took tongs and offered that. I've had 2 successful attempts at that, one with a juvenile and one with an adult. The previous owner of the imported female that is proven, he has video success of that female taking a fillet. So he's had success with fillets. He had it. I want to say he said he had success with it twice, but that was about it. Otherwise, I personally I've attempted it plenty of times in the earlier days. And as I said, I've had very infrequent success, but from my observations and personal experience, I would frown away from it unless you have juveniles that are freshly imported and you can start it from the process as a baby and continue it. The only reason I say that is because I associate it more as with an adult, you're tease feeding an adult, and this is an aquatic animal that stresses out very easily already, and now you're slapping it in the face with food. And it may not associate that necessarily with food, but unless it's with elephant trunk snakes, unless they're in a hunting mode, they don't give a care about food. They don't, because they're all day they're in the environment with fish, and they can interact with them all day. But until they're in hunting mode, they're not trying to trap them. They're not trying to catch them. They're not trying to interact with them. So I think you can definitely do it. I've heard, and I've got somebody that has acquired a couple babies that's working with him that I'm talking with, and he's got some promising success with babies that I'm very interested in observing and kind of watching and hearing how his long-term goes if he continues the feeding. He's had success recently with them, and even to the extent of just dropping a frozen thawed in and walking away. So that's encouraging, but again, it's one of those of I foresee that being successful and long-term with something that you can do that from the beginning, but I don't know that it's necessary you can get a sub-adult or an adult and start that right off the bat, because they've been for so many years we're naturally prone to I go hunt and this is how I catch food versus it slaps me in the face and now it comes to me. So with something like that, I think that I lean towards that's probably more stressful.
Gotcha.
All right, Tony. So we're already an hour and 14 minutes in. I want you to go ahead and plug yourself, and then I have 3 questions, and I don't know how many Eric has for you.
Plug myself. First off, support USARK. Everything we do is for USARK. Before I plug myself or anything, USARK supports the community. You support the USARK. Become a member. If you're struggling to become a member, reach out to me. I'd love to help somebody become a member if they're really struggling, but do what we can to support the community. They're constantly fighting for everything. If you can't advertise for yourself, you can't do anything for yourself, don't want to do something for yourself, do it for USARK. Reach out at any show that you've got locally. They're always looking for members. Reach out. Somebody to help out, volunteers, things like that. It's a great cause. It helps out kind of the community, and it helps fight for you to be able to keep what we've got. Aside from that, I am I'm Tony. I'm the main face behind Revision Reptiles. Really, Revision Reptiles is me and my family. I've got my 2 kids, my wife, and then there's me. We're Revision Reptiles. We really are social media. We've got Facebook and Instagram. That's about the extent that we've got. So yeah, join, follow. You can reach out if you need help with US art. Please reach out. I'll point you in the right directions. At least get you to Vanessa or Phil or somebody that can help out there. If you got a local show and you're just looking to go and you're going to spend the whole day there and kill it, volunteer, help out. They could always use them.
And I wanted to add to that because I actually want to say that I am trying to help out anybody who doesn't have a membership, that I'm willing to pay for a membership for them for US Art as well. So I'm trying to jump in with Gary and everybody else helping out US Art to gather members. So anybody looking for a membership, hit me up. I'll get you covered. Or hit up Tony.
Nice.
All right. So that being said, Tony, what do you think of the podcast so far?
Like it. I like it. I like what you guys are doing. Slowly building the brand, getting that going. Seems like you're getting everything pretty squared off and set away. How do you think everything went tonight?
I liked it.
Horrible.
Entertaining. Very entertaining. Send it back.
I
Anything
think,
we
Tony,
didn't touch on
think
that
you
you
might
want?
have the. I think you might have the biggest elephant trunk I've ever seen in my life. On your Instagram.
I think in captive US, I think I'll claim that. I caution it. And again, I'm glad. I gladly love to eat crow on that one. But please show me. But I think I can say that, yeah, I probably got the larger one.
Well, Johnny.
What?
Johnny Benham has some elephant trunks, but yours are way bigger than his.
He's got juveniles.
Like, you have some big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got some juveniles. We've got a few juveniles. We've got 2.4 right now. No. Yeah, 2.4.
I'm
And I
assuming
talked to Johnny.
the bigger one is the female, right?
Yes, the larger ones. We got 2 larger females. Unfortunately for the adults, we don't know the ages. The male, and with the adults, we honestly, there was no, we want this, we want this. We do have, by default, morphs, so to say, as far as what are called calicos, and then the wild type or natural type. Overall, I'm more interested just in the general wild type, the overall interest. That said, it's probably a great thing that we invested and got the adults, because again, that's at least long-term success. So far, they're in hands that they did thrive this long so far in captivity. So overall, it's a good thing. Mainly, we're just interested in learning about them and getting through them. And it was really, everything was acquired by, at least for the adults, was what was the opportunity, what was available at that time. For the male, we honestly were searching for, I want to say, 2 years. And that was the only male that came available. It was a calico male. And it came in through, I want to say it was Fascination Herps, is through, we ended up picking it up through, reached out to them, and we heard that they had one and got that. But for 2 years, we reached out continuously to the importers, and there were babies that would come in, but no adults. We'd have the adult male or the adult female. So, well, I've got a juvenile. I'd buy a group of juvenile babies, and unfortunately, when I lost something, it's the female survived, but the male would go. Well, I already have females. I need males. So definitely look through that, and I think the male was. An adult male is definitely a very rare, or sub-adult male is a very rare occurrence to come in. So anybody out there looking to, hey, I'm getting into these and I found an adult female that's available, I caution you, because even if it goes through, if you're long-term as I want to breed, it's going to be difficult to find a male. And then most of the females that are adults that come in gravid. So most of the importers will bring them in gravid. They'll drop their babies, and then the importers will sell them as adults. Some will inform you that they drop babies, and some will just, here's a fresh import female, have fun. Oh, and we have babies available also if you'd like some of those. But that's part of the import game, and especially with something that's kind of uncommon and harder to take care of. And like I said, it's accepted that for long-term success is 4 years is the life expectancy or something.
Yeah. All right.
That's tough.
All right. You want to ask one of your questions? Or you want me to ask mine?
I got two questions for Tony.
I know I got two left.
All right, cool. All right, we'll alternate. My first question was about the elephant trunks. So are you mostly feeding like live cichlids?
I source tilapia. I thankfully have found a fishery that will deliver if I buy enough. So I will call them occasionally. They don't stock all year. Tilapia, unfortunately, in this area, they're seasonal. So I buy large quantities when in season, and I'm calling probably once a month, once every month to every 2 months, depending on the quantity and the size they can get. Typically, I aim for the adults. I aim for about 4 to 6 inch tilapia, which are breeder size adults. So if you're looking in your local area on Craigslist or something, they're your breeder size adults. And if you're reaching out to somebody that is trying to sell them, you're going to have to talk to them and give them the information that they're for feeders and not breeding, because pricing will. It's just like going somewhere and buying cichlids. They're breeders, they're cichlids, they're pets. We do stock in the off seasons when we can't get anything and things are looking a little thin, or for the juveniles mainly, not for the adults as much. We do buy cichlids. It's a painful couple months because, again, we go to the local store and just go, we'll take the whole row of the top biggest ones you got. They used to be $10 was on sale, and now they're about 12 or 13 if they have to go.
It's expensive quick.
It gets, and they don't supply, or they don't stock in the hundreds, and they don't do a deal if you buy 15 to 20. And when you're typically with, again, we've got tanks that are set up with a 1.2 in each tank. Adults 1.2 and juveniles 1.2, and we stock again 75 to 100 to 125 tilapia in those tanks, and you can't get that at a local shop. So we encourage, for anybody that's got the babies, thankfully in most cases nobody's crazy. Most people aren't crazy like us and don't see an adult at the show or online and go, I want the adults because I'm going to take on something that nobody can keep alive as a baby, and I'll take the adults and build them a pond. We did that, thankfully. When we committed to that, we committed to, okay, when we see adults come in, we need to kind of, if we can evaluate and honestly take them in, we accepted that we are probably the best responsible individual. We do have a few others that will reach out to and be like, hey, did you see this came in? Are you looking? Are you interested? No? Damn, we're not either. So let's see how long this goes. Or if it disappears, or if it kind of pops up. We bought what we did when we could, and now we stock the ponds. We got a pond in the garage, and then we stock the large tanks. But as I said, when the local fishery won't do it, we struggled in the beginning because it was, for babies, you want live bears. So for those getting a fresh import from a show or a fresh newborn baby that came in because it's cute, set it up in a small aquarium. You're good for at least 3 to 4 years, if not more. But you want to stock that tank with live bearing fish, and you want to stock it heavy. They will actively hunt daily, and they will read basically the environment. I've had the adults and the juveniles. I'll stock the setups or the tanks, the ponds, and they'll know within 20 minutes of stocking, they'll be out basically doing laps, kind of surveying the situation, take off and go back. And then at the evening, sunset time, they'll come out and start their hunts, go back, then they'll come back out a couple times throughout the night up into the evening. And they'll do that multiple times. But then as the fish supplies are depleted, they'll acknowledge that there's no activity. I'm wasting my time. Those laps become, okay, I went out for a lap and there was nothing. Hell, I'm not going out for 3 laps tonight. I'm going to go out in the evening. I'm going to do 1 lap. I'm done. There's nothing. All right, I'll go out in the morning and check. Nothing. And they'll start to kind of diminish their activity. Whereas most snakes, obviously, they're just, as they're getting hungrier, they're kind of just venturing around more and more.
Yeah.
They kind of read the environment. And I kind of looked at it, because other people have asked, since I stock so heavy, are you worried about overfeeding? And especially since they're so large, the adults that I have, I'm not worried about overfeeding because I can only get tilapia and the heavy stocking and the sizes for a certain period of months. and then they're not available, which is more of a naturalistic and realistic case probably. So I'm not heavily concerned. I actually overfeed or heavily stock during those times, and then as it gets into those periods where I can't get it, then I'll start. Okay, I've got to invest in this large quantity here, and realistically, they're not as active or as interested because they're already turned off to the school stocking is not as big anyway.
All right.
Does that answer your question well enough? Or you
Very much.
All right, my next question is: you could change one thing in the hobby, what would it be and why?
I could change
Well,
one
hobby,
thing.
industry, you know, whether it be with reptiles, negativity, whatever.
I mean, I'd take the drama out of everything, but you can't take that out of everything. Unfortunately, you're not going to ever get out of that. I mean,
Yeah.
as I said, I got the social media platforms for just to share my stuff. I don't partake. I don't like to partake in the drama of that stuff. I know a lot of people don't. We all are humans, so we're interested. We're drawn to it, but we look at it. We want to read it. We want things like that. We're interested internally in the background, but I'm more just we're here for the same reasons at the end of it. We don't have to like each other, but do it for the same reason, come together. I do have to say though, with the local shows, the local show, the Super Show, San Diego Reptile Super Show, the Pomona one, that was the LA Pet Fair this time around. It was kind of nice to see that this show brought in not just the reptile side of it, but I heard about, and unfortunately I missed the Saturday for the auction and all that, but I kind of got the follow-up and discussions. But it was the reptile community with some of that bird community and the aquatic community that we already know, like the reptile community, they've got those shows and those side shows and the things, but to see all of those brought together and then exposing them to kind of US art, it was interesting to see. I guess I've taken advantage of the reptile side we're more of a community, as much as the social side says socially we're divided beyond belief, but seeing all of those fractures together and hearing all of them interact that evening at that event and how that the overall weekend went amongst the various ones, it was actually reassuring and kind of nice to hear the overall feedback or takeaway from the various communities. The reptile community is actually a little bit more connected, and they were more impressed with what we have already together. And that's just from that. I mean, that could just from that show, but that was an experience where Rami, the show promoter for the LA Pet Fair, San Diego, or the Reptile Super Show, brought in the aquatics for an aquatic show. He had one building for that. He had one building for birds, and then he had outside for succulents or plants. But he brought all of those in for that one event. So it wasn't just a reptile show. It was a pet fair that was treated kind of vending just like we see at all our reptile shows. It was the vendors for that, but for your aquatic stations, your big aquatic vendors, your plant vendors, your bird vendors. And that was just, again, the feedback of, as much as we're divided and we have that drama that we want to get rid of, if we can all just get past the I don't like you, you don't like me, that's nice. We don't have to like each other. We're actually more together than we think, kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'd get rid of, is just the social bullshit. Stop competing. We're all competing for who's better than the other. End of the day, you can still be like, you're better than me. I want to see you succeed. It's cool. It's not a big deal.
So, like, people always tell me I'm like the marketing king, and I don't feel that way. You can even ask, like, Bosa's in here, like, you can ask Creative Reptiles. Like, I'm not, like, I don't feel like I'm any better than anybody else here. I want everybody to succeed. I won't let nobody fall or fail, because I've been there. I know what that's like. Nobody was there for me except for one person, actually, I think was in here, is Bosa, before I started talking to everybody else. So, there maybe it was quite a few people, but I mean, now they don't really talk to me as much. So, I don't know what happened. So with that being said, I'm just like, I want everybody to succeed.
That's
So
right.
I don't want nobody to fail at all because I know what it's like. I just
Well, unfortunately, and I'm going to say the harsh truth, we're not all going to succeed. And
yeah
we're not, but again, like I said in the beginning, I do this as a hobby. I'm not here to be, I'm not doing it for social media. So I'm not trying to succeed there. I'm not doing it to further a career on that. And so I'm not trying to succeed it. We don't have to compete that way. The competition, and unfortunately, a lot of that problem comes from those people that are in those areas. I'm trying to compete with you. I'm trying to compete with you. We got to learn how in those areas to not to compete, but do it with kind of the sportsmanship that needs to be there. It's unfortunately got to be referred to that way, I guess, as bad as it is, but you need that sportsmanship. You can't be like, oh, I'm competing against you because we're on the same platform. You got more views than me. Well, that's a problem. No. And that's like, we're not competing, and we're not with some of the people that are more at ease and just like, you know what, I'm not part of the drama are probably the people that, and again, I could be putting my foot in my mouth, but they're probably the people that are, I got this as an out, or I enjoy it, or I do it for this. So they're not as invested in it as emotionally and financially. They're just more, hey, this is my joy. I got the other stresses for that stress of finances or for this or that. So kind of makes it easy, whereas a lot of those others. But then again, we've got the human side of it. We're all interested in what the fuck happened. What's the drama today? Oh, this person's got a problem. What happened?
yeah I got
So
you.
you can't
I see what you're
escape
saying.
it. That's a reality. It's just we got to learn how to just accept. Some of us just I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, extremely hard. It's exhausting. Um, that's why I
Partying
just try to sit back. I sit back and I watch everything that goes on.
at
Unless
the end
somebody
of
brings it to my attention, that's it.
at the end of the day, whether you're doing it, whatever you're doing it under, or whatever platform, whatever reason, whatever purpose, whatever publication, it's an extension of you. So how do you want to portray yourself? Is the end all be all argument on that? If at the end of the day you say something and you want to stand on the hill for that, that's fine. But that's where you're at. We all just have to kind of get to that. You know what? At some point you can argue with a wall, and then you have to turn and walk away because that wall is not falling down.
I've done that, and I've learned that too. Like working
It's difficult.
in the law enforcement field, yeah, and arguing with my captains, like, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna leave it at that.
What's next?
um, what is this? Another success and motivation for me. Love to see others reach goals. It's an awesome feeling. For real, yeah, it is.
Yeah. Seeing
Like
others hit
when,
those things, especially the things they've been chasing after for a while.
for me, it's not only that. It's like when they have, like, they never had a logo and then they get their logo. That I'm happy, extremely happy, excited. Or
It's
when they
good to
drop
see people grow. It's good to just see people growing. Hey, but
or
again,
get like new
some people
merch,
don't
new
want to see that.
shirts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got new merch and new shirts. Where's that sparkly thing you got?
Oh,
You got it right there. You got it in front of you.
Oh, they
nah,
just showed
I
this
put it
week.
up.
There you go.
It's a new key ring, a big flexi. It's a holographic. For those who see, these came out really dope. I'm excited how they came out. Um, and I just got these stickers in too. This, it says Big Flexin', the little animaker holographic.
Nice.
Um, and then these as well. Man, dude, I got that overfitted size shirt, the gym shirt tomorrow. So we'll see how that looks. So, yeah, really excited. Just constantly growing with ideas, dude. My brain never shuts down. That's the bad part. My brain never shuts down, never, ever,
That's
and I
not
hate
a,
it.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, but it's a bad thing when you're trying to sleep, and then in the middle of the night, you're like, oh shit, you're making a reel right in the middle of the night. Like I made it a reel at 2 a.m. 2 a.m. and then go back to sleep and then get up for work at 5. Like, come on, bro, you gotta shut down at some point.
It's time for a break.
Yeah. I'm out. Yeah, but it's not gonna happen because I already know myself. I'm gonna keep pushing, keep
You'll take a
lifting
break.
up
What
others.
else to do in the meantime?
Well, I do. I take. Well, now we dropped to 2 days. We used to be 3 days. We used to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I was just trying to push all the way until I got back up to like midway, like 51, and
I
we
think
hit
the
that.
biggest I think the biggest thing is just consistency. Doesn't matter if you have it once a week, twice, once a month, just as consistent as possible.
Yeah.
And that's just from the listener perspective. I mean, not feedback as a bad, positive, inconsistent, consistent for you guys specific, but just from someone that's a listener to occasionally throughout the day at work or something. Um, Leaning wise, and this is probably for most people, but if you can remain consistent, whatever the schedule is, you be once a month, once every 2 months, as long as you're consistent, that kind of just helps you and that kind of builds it to me. Because then
For
that could,
me, what keeps me going is the messages I get when I wake up. Like sometimes it's for people that are not even in the hobby, but like, dude, I like your shirt, I like your merch. Like, how much is it to get me a shirt and a bracelet? Like, like that guy, for instance, he wanted a wristband and that shirt, but he wants it with this. He wants the snake on there in the back. So I got to make that shirt custom for him. So that's what he's paying for because that's what he wants.
yeah.
And he's not even in the hobby.
Isn't
You know
it
what I mean?
amazing how many people want custom? Oh, I saw your stuff. I like it. I want custom.
Yeah. Like, I want. Can you do the one with the snake? That'd be dope. You
Hmm.
know. So
It's a business. It's manufacturing, just in a different sense. Product
yeah.
development.
My last, and then I don't know. Last thing is like the positivity too. Everybody reaching out, like how we're doing great on the podcast. How much they love Eric. How much they like David. He's full of knowledge. I mean, I never thought I'd be here. You know,
Yeah.
back here at episode 52, especially with you, Tony. Like
Well,
I didn't even know
I
about you
appreciate you.
until I reached out. You know.
Hey, I stay under the radar. I don't, as I said, I don't advertise for myself often. I've been around for a while, set up the platforms just to share photos, share my animals. Don't really do too much this year. I think maybe last year, I paid into Morph Market just to help kind of unload some of the offspring of yellow anacondas, but really very limited on that and very selective. So not heavy into advertising. And again, this because I do this as a side thing. Gone to the local shows for so many years. By the time I started volunteering and kind of going for the full weekend, I just connected with USARC, and now I just kind of volunteer with them the whole time. So when I'm at any show, I'm there for USARC. I don't want to capitalize that and go, hey, let me, while you're thinking of this, look at this. I don't want that mix. I don't want that intermingle. Obviously, 100% support. Everything I do is volunteer work for them just because, as I said, with the Yellow Anacondas, I've been working with them before the Lacey Act impacts, during the Lacey Act impacts, and now that the Lacey Act isn't impacting them, I'm still working with them. So to me,
It's
it
awesome.
holds the moment I could start actually producing and kind of selling babies to kind of feed them and do things like this. Anything I sell, especially yellow anaconda wise, there's a percentage that goes back to USARC every donation. So it doesn't matter how many babies I produce, percentage I do that just because without their fights and stuff, it was I'd be working with these things, but not on at all on the level that I am. And neither would anybody else really, or I wouldn't even be able to share them with anybody else. So, unfortunately, Eric, I can't help you out. We tried,
It's all right.
and
Not
we're
your
still
fault.
trying, I believe. But unfortunately, you'll have to move to a different state.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, is a little saddening sometimes when I get people that are in states that are like very gung ho. Is I'll send you this, this, and this, trying to slide by it, and it's like, no, unfortunately, where you're at, I can't. Oh well, I'm gonna get it anyway. It's like, well, I hope to high hell you don't, because that's bad upon all of us. But you know what? I'm not gonna be the culprit that helps you do that, and I don't know what to tell you. So it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't, but support them as much as possible because what anybody in the community, whether you've got your logo, whether you've got your brand, you've got your name. I mean, if you've got a platform, I hope to high hell every platform is sharing a USARK logo somewhere, just because every platform, I don't care what kind of podcast, YouTube, anything like this, there's no excuse why, in my opinion. And again, put my foot in my mouth, glad to do it. Every platform should be, if you're in the reptile community and you're doing it for the reptiles, then that's number one that you should have, because that's why you have them, or why you're going to keep having them. So that's really where my advertising goes. And then as far as me slowly building that up, occasionally, I think because I only produce very infrequently, I fail at the advertising and building my brand and stuff like that also. So I've had a couple customers lately and people that have purchased Anacondas, and I've had some transactions with some great people. And they've even made comments like that. Hey, we looked for you and you did. We looked on Morph Mart, we looked here, there, and you didn't pop up really. It was just, we happened to be scrolling here and we found you, and it was this. And admittedly, I'm working on the brand part, but it's more for, I do it for the animals I work with are more my animals, and the offspring are slowly getting to that point where, hey, we're gonna make it. We're making them available. We're producing. Unfortunately, my production, the 2023 offspring of yellow anacondas was the biggest I've produced, because I produced 2 litters. Normally, I try to very, very much limit that, because again, I don't think everybody needs yellow anacondas. The world doesn't need dozens of them produced just because you can. So I intentionally divide and split and pull my males for half the year if I don't plan on breeding. My males actually one of my males started showing interest to a female that he was with recently with this Southern California heat wave, and now they're all separated for the rest of the year. Because I don't think I want to breed this year. I held back last year. I still have some offspring from 2023, and I don't know that I want to produce normals or anything yellow anaconda wise outside of what I've currently got. So I try to divide them if I don't want to breed them. They're pretty simple to breed if you keep them together.
That's awesome, bro. That's awesome.
They'll
I
do
like
it
that a lot.
themselves.
Well,
Yeah.
What was that?
I said they'll do it themselves.
And again, it could, I mean, at least in your conditions, they definitely would. I could be taking advantage of the Southern California weather. We're pretty stable. We have swings. We do have swings where they get warm during the summer and then a little cooler during the winter, but not. When I say a little cooler, I say it that way because I'm in Southern California. My cold is no one else's cold. Most other people have an actual cold. Ours we're not talking very low. I mean, we're not in freezing conditions or anything like that. Most of the time, I think we're above 65. So temperature wise, they're good. Provide them a large water tub, feed them heavily feed them standard, and then let them do their thing. In October, they'll start showing. Typically, October is when I see breeding interest. So we'll stop feeding, and then they'll be breeding all of October through December into January. And they'll be locked basically all day, off and on. And other than that, they're pretty simple. As far as breeding wise, they're pretty simple. And then they go through, because they're in the boa family, not quite boas, but they're in that family as they give live birth. They'll go the entire 6 to 8 months and hold everything. And then you'll get home or wake up and find that lovely surprise.
So before we get on out of here, I always ask for a positive message for everybody watching. You have to leave a positive message.
All right. Positive message. Positive message is that no matter what you're doing today, tomorrow is always going to be a different outcome. At no point will you have the same outcome. Every day is going to be a different learning experience. It's going to be different parameters, different setup. You can learn something new every day, no matter what. the book says, no matter what the care sheet says, your situation is always going to allow for a different perspective of how the care is necessary.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Well
Hell yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Take
You
the,
got-
care, take the care sheets into consideration, but once you've got that consideration and understanding, you got to look back at your situation and watch the animal. I think a lot of us, especially in the breeding side, and it could be over exaggerated, depending on the crowd and the people watching. But when you're getting heavily into breeding in the breeding side, we tend to lose a little bit of track of that fascination of observation. And I think if any of us can step back and look at that, especially take advantage of it when you get that new species, especially because that's when you're the most fascinated. Take that time and just grab a drink, grab some. If you smoke, if you do, whatever you do, whatever your avenue is, do it. Grab a chair and just watch. And do this on a frequency basis, day, night. If you're just sitting there, you got nothing else to do, go sit and do that. Try that occasionally and just watch. And that observation will open your eyes to, is this necessary? It may be necessary for one snake. It may not be for the other. It may not be for all of them. Hell, it may not be right for the species, but the care sheet could say it's right. You won't know. And it could be okay. Could absolutely be okay, and you could be sitting there staring at nothing. Oftentimes, I've done that. Elephant trunk snakes, staying in the hide all night. I'll stuck his head out. Ooh, we got air. Do I want to time it? Nah, I missed that. And then there's other times where I've caught some behaviors that I've reached out to people and I'm like, hey, have you seen this? And they're like, well, no. A couple days later, oh yeah, I've witnessed that. No, you didn't. You just now did. Or hey, I've witnessed with their hunting techniques, especially the elephant trunks. I've seen at least 5 different techniques that they utilize, depending on the situation and scenarios. Males, females, depending on the setups. They'll use different hunting methods and techniques, depending on the quantities of fish, the size of fish, the array of fish. And it's been interesting to watch, but that's not something you're going to see if you just put them in the tank, walk away, or put them in the tub, walk away. You can, and there's nothing wrong with tubs, nothing at all. But if you can get back and observe, you can open the tub and observe for a while. Put a plexiglass sheet over the top of it. Sit back and watch. It's just observation. If we can get back to, we all love to see these animals before we put them in the tub, and we found that was the ideal home. So if you can get back and do that, that kind of gives you a great perspective. And even when you're getting burnt out, that gives you that perspective of this is what I'm enjoying and what I like.
Yeah.
I agree. That's a very interesting point that you brought up, because I didn't even realize that there would be different hunting methods for elephant trunks. But you're right.
But yeah,
I imagine they traditionally grab it with their mouth like any other snake, but then they also could grab it with their body or something when they swim through a school.
yeah, they actually use their body as a net a lot of the times. So they'll basically kind of flail or swim frantically to kind of cause the schools to go in a certain direction, and then they'll slow down and kind of use their body, stretch it out, leave their tail down low, and then they'll go up high and kind of try and create a net and kind of swoop everything in and make like a C and close it in, and they'll go off with touch. So they're very touch sensitive. So anything that touches them, they'll register it, and they can actually register the difference between another elephant trunk snake and a meal mid-strike.
Oh, wow.
Probably one of the coolest things I've witnessed is I've watched two sub-adults that were in a tank hunting actively. Mid-strike, they both were hunting fish in the same vicinity, and a fish touched them both, bounced from one to the other, caused them both to strike. And mid-strike, they realized they ended up body touching each other, and they'd each closed their mouths and deterred mid-strike and deterred the direction and stopped the strike altogether. And that was probably one of the most impressive, because it was amazing. Just obviously in a situation where 2 animals are striking at each other, especially in dry land snakes, that's going to end in 2 biting each other, and either you're letting go or you're going in a coil. And in a hunting mode, I was expecting coils, but I was very pleased to see that they just mid-strike stopped and acknowledged that, hey, that's a snake, or that's something else, and that's not a food source. Could have been luck, could have been anything like that. I don't say that 100% that's what they're always like, but I've personally witnessed that they acknowledge 100% the difference between different things that they touch. Their sensitivity is extremely sensitive.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I would never realize that.
For real, I would have never realized that either.
They're every observation is more and more interesting with them. I've seen some things that are just, it makes sense when you see it and you think about it and stand back, but then prior to seeing it, it was, well, that would never cross my mind. I provide aquatic hides. They'll actually come out, grab air, bring it back down, and blow that air, fresh air, into their aquatic hide to create an air pocket cavity, and utilize those pockets. And they'll basically a storage pocket, and they'll utilize those pockets if they feel threatened in their enclosure, and they'll just stay in the hide and come up in their hide, grab that air, and come back down, rather than coming out. So if I ever, and I don't even have to go in the actual water of the setup, so I can just remove the lids. They'll feel the vibration, and they just won't come out. But okay, I'm staying in here until I feel like that's safe. So to see the first time I witnessed it, that was interesting, because you think, what the hell? That can't be what you think it is. And then you're actually watching this animal come up, get a big lungs of air, come down, and just go into the hide and go, what the hell? You hear so much water. You think, okay, obviously it just had it just had defecated or something. Dismiss it the first couple times, and I'm like, okay, what the hell is going on? After a couple rounds of seeing it, and then just actually watched them. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to catch it, but that was one of those ahas. This makes sense, and it's crazy to see, but after seeing it, it's like, well, that makes 100% sense. They're not very well researched and out in the wild. There's not too much naturally found on them. Chances are they're sensitive enough that they're just, somebody's coming, I'm staying in my home. I ain't coming out for 6 hours. I got an air pocket in here that'll give me 2 days. I don't have to come out for shit. So
Damn.
To me, that makes sense. And it was one of those, I didn't ever think about it or anything like that until randomly I was like, well, I don't like the idea of a snake in a tank without a hide. Let me put a hide in there, and then saw it happen. Okay, well, that kind of expanded me to going, okay, well, witnessing this, what if for the adults I provide an actual hide that has locking lids and something like that? Oh, they do it too. Well, let's verify. Dump the air out, open the lid completely, make sure it's not okay. The next day, hey, there's air in there. Well, maybe it's from the filter. Maybe it's from this. Nope, can't be. It's too far from this. Too far from this. Can't be from this. Okay, it clearly is from this. Okay, we've witnessed it. So, it goes back to the observation side. It would never have been something I would have ever come across, ever thought of. I just kind of, okay, I'm going to put a hide in here, and then sitting in the living room watching TV, listening to it a couple times in a night. What the is going on? Okay, that makes sense. And then connect those dots.
Huh. I'm like, interesting.
Sorry to run off on that one. That was
No, you're good. I was just like, that's cool. You know, it's interesting. Like something we learn every day. I didn't even know that. That's for sure. So, but I don't know if anything else Eric has to say or ask.
Yeah, I got one more question.
There you go.
Give me something that you encountered, Tony, like a problem or a situation that you weren't really expecting. And it could be with the reptiles. It could be where you keep your reptiles. Just something unexpected that you ran into.
I like that question. I think, to be honest, and this may be a little bit, the biggest aha or thing I ran into that I was not expecting was it is completely with the elephant trunk snakes and the feeding. There's nothing that at all in all the publications and all the emphasis on this, that, and another thing, and pH, water levels, this, that, proper care, this is the only way to keep them. There's nothing nothing that I ever came across that emphasized how much these animals eat. And again, that could be because, as I said earlier, I think that's where the hobby kind of has failed with them, and where the lack of success has been is we didn't understand how much they truly need to eat. But even to this day, I call my fishery, and I'm like, I'm still not prepared most of the time, just because of again, I'm reaching out to a local fishery that stocks Southern California lakes, ponds, and fishing locations, not your reptile room. So when I call them looking for fish, I'm buying quantities of 100, 200, 300 at a time. And I'm in an area where thankfully I have that, but I was not prepared for that in the beginning. I never considered that. I knew fish feeder was what this was, but like you were saying earlier, goldfish is what I was thinking. I was thinking rosy minnows, mosquito fish, goldfish, maybe a koi here and there occasionally. But I underestimated severely the consumption of what elephant trunks themselves will consume, especially coming from the dry land snake once every couple weeks, or once a week as an adult or as a baby, to once every month or couple months as an adult, to the elephant trunks will take out 15 to 20 fish in a night and then be ready for tomorrow night, the same thing, and do that in a week. I caution a lot of people when anybody reaches out to me. That's one of the things I emphasize. I was like, steady heat, steady temperature, and food. Get a steady supply of food and get a steady temperature, or get your tank steady to where you're not fluctuating daily, day and night. Your animal should do fine. And food is going to be your biggest battle, because as a baby, they're easy to get. As juvenile and adult, it gets expensive. And as an adult, it's really difficult, at least if you're in a remote area. Eric, you would be beautiful if you had it, but unfortunately you can't. Actually, I believe in Florida, there's actually a native population somewhere of elephant trunks. So if you don't mind catching them, I'll reach out to a location.
Hey, go catch one, Eric. Hell
I'm
yeah.
better at catching the tilapia and the lakes out here.
Yeah. The ones you're catching
like, go
with the
catch
line
one.
are probably too large.
Yeah, that's
that would
a great
probably be
answer, because that's not common knowledge with elephant trunk snakes.
No. And most species, that's probably the last thing they talk about, how often or how much they consume. So that, as I said, was my biggest underestimation. And even to this day, now that that's why, if anybody, like on my socials and stuff, I emphasize and I share my adults as often as possible, because I'm more of I know if you're at a show and you see a fresh import, it's going to likely be the babies, the cute seal pup, little baby worms that are smaller than a boa, a baby boa, and things like that. But those things get significant in size. You're talking a snake that is as large as your boa, or your maybe a small male Burmese python. They get to be a significant size. And when you get to be a significant size, you have consumption. And because these animals are eating aquatic, it's mostly a water weight. So the numbers are significantly increased, because to get the actual, to get the quantity of vitamins and minerals and things you need from your meal, you need to consume twice as many. You don't have as much, you have more water weight. So it's like you eating a ton of lettuce. You're not going to go very far.
Definitely not.
Bro, my mouth is dry. Sorry, I don't have water with me. Yeah, I like all of that, man. All of that, I really do. A lot of information. It's what I wanted, especially about the Andacondas. Yellow's still my favorite. I don't care what they say.
Oh, I love them. I love them, and I caution everybody on them. But I think if you can get past the cautions, you're okay with them. And that's why I'm as cautious. I'm as bluntly cautious with them. I prefer to scare people in the beginning and then still come back and ask questions. Because then it's okay. You're not going to be scared off from something that's a little defensive at first. I love them. I love them to death. As I said, I've handled boas that I've had plenty of boas that are much larger and much meaner. So I personally think they could be up there with boas. Where they're lacking is they don't have as much rainbow coloration. They're coming around, morphs are coming through, they're growing, things like that. If that's really what the eye appeal is, the market appeal is, it kind of it's going to land on how much people can get past either their disposition or start getting those morphs in there to catch that eye appeal.
Yeah, right now I'm working on with somebody. Just she wants me to pay shipping, and she's gonna ship me a Burmese python that keeps striking at her. Very aggressive Burmese, but it's because it already bit her, and she just puts it back. So he already knows that's all he has to do.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why I'm very aware. Like when people reach out to me, I put them through a little bit of a gauntlet. So by the time they're willing to get past the questions that I have for them, it's okay. You're at least willing to put the time in, because I don't want to. I mean, as I said, this is more just a side thing and hobby. If I produce babies, they move, goes back into them, the feeders, things like that, percentage to USR, percentage to the community, things like that. But it's really, if I'm doing that, I'd rather hold on to it than send it somewhere that's going to turn it over in a couple of months. Just because I at least have, if it stays here, I may have too many, but at least I know it's going to get the attention, the care. It may not get handled as frequently as a pet or something that I truly, this is a holdback, something I want to work with on a regular basis, but it's also going to get the care and stuff that it needs, and not get that fear. Versus I'd rather put somebody through the gauntlet of that and then they get through it and be like, okay, look, this is nothing. Let's go. Because then I feel confident with that. And again, if I let anything go, I expect that whoever's reaching out to me, wherever it's going, that person's going to reach out at any point, and there's no question. I'm picking up, I'm talking back, I'm responding. Maybe a slight delay, just time zones, work, family, this and that. But at any point, especially if somebody buys something from me, animal wise, that basically you've bought my attention for life. Whether that thing's still with you or not, you can ask a question. I'm going to be at the other end of that phone, other end of that social media, whatever, to respond, because you're not going to be on your eye. And I'm glad for people that turn around and go, oh, you're too high, this, that, and other thing. It's this and that. I can get that here. Here's the shop. I'll send you straight to the shop number. I'll give you their phone number, their email address, all the information. Hell, I'll send you the ad for the animal that they're going to sell you. But don't come back when they don't want to respond and tell you how to help, care, breed, play with, work with, get past, feed, those things. So that's where I'm at. But I appreciate you guys having me on here. Absolutely appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to share my story, my side, and kind of share with you your love of anacondas on one end, the yellow anacondas.
Mine.
Yes. If you have more questions, I absolutely expect questions, comments.
I do. I'm gonna actually hit you up after this.
Absolutely, we'll make your dreams come reality.
I was like 2 hours. I'm just like, wow.
I mean,
like,
I've been working with them for a while. As I said, they're one of those species that I understand the reputation, the stigma, everything behind them. But I truly appreciate them. I love them. And I think there is absolutely a lot of just over hype about them. And it's just got to get into that regular handling, get into the people that really want to handle them, want to work with them, and not simply get them for the name Anaconda. That stigma carries a lot. A lot of people want to run around and say, I got an anaconda. Not going to lie, a lot of people want that.
Yeah, I got you.
So.
Well, Tony, I want to thank you for coming on, being here, giving us time out of your day. That was a great show. Great episode. I loved it. Everything you said is perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.
No, thank you
good.
guys. Appreciate it. Follow Instagram,
Hell
Facebook,
yeah. See,
either one
great
of them.
show. Hell yeah,
Appreciate
Tony.
it. Look forward to hearing more and maybe follow-ups when you actually get one of these things.
I actually want to do a part 2, but that'll be a little later. You know, if you're
Okay.
down for it or up for it, it's your call.
I'm open. I'm flexible. I'd love to do another one. I think this was a good time. It's
So
do
that'd be
part 2
awesome.
in the future for sure. I appreciate it, guys.
Hell yeah. And on that, well, then that being said, I don't know if Eric has anything else to say. Because if not, then we're out of here. Y'all have a good night. Remember to check your loved ones. Check on your loved ones. Pick people up. Never put them down. Stay positive. We love y'all. Have a good night, guys. Go support USARC. Be a member.
Support USARC.
Peace.
Have a good one, guys.
Have a good night,
Thank you
guys.
guys very much.